Hello and welcome to the Standards for Technological and Engineering Literacy in Your State Standards, ITEEA's Lesson Plan Tool. Today we will begin with an overview of the Standards for Technological and Engineering Literacy, how to navigate ITEEA's website to find STEL resources and the free lesson planning tool, how to use the lesson plan tool, and we will conclude with time for questions and discussions. At the conclusion of the session, you should be able to distinguish the differences of context, practices, standards, and benchmarks, apply the standards for technological and engineering literacy in your state standards to a lesson of your choice, create a formal lesson plan utilizing the lesson plan tool. A formal presentation on the Standards for Technological and Engineering Literacy can be located in the Presentation folder, and additional resource links are found by clicking on Resources. The Standards for Technological and Engineering Literacy offer a common set of expectations for what students in technology and engineering, STEM, laboratory classrooms should learn through 3 dimensions of technology and engineering education: knowing, taking in information, organizing it, and understanding factual and conceptual relationships. Thinking, making sense of the information through questioning, analysis, and decision-making. Doing, using technology and engineering in applied ways such as designing, making building, producing, and evaluating. Standards for Technology and Engineering Literacy is designed to help educators better understand technology and engineering education and how to teach it. STEL core disciplinary standards, found in yellow, are based on the concept of power standards. Standards for Technological and Engineering Literacy presents 8 core disciplinary standards with 142 benchmarks linked to grades pre-kindergarten through 12. What students should know and be able to do in order to be technologically and engineering literate. All students should study all standards and practices in red, but not necessarily every context. Standards and practices are not taught in isolation. There's often overlap. Benchmarks in the Standards for Technological and Engineering Literacy provide the essential content elements for the standards. Benchmarks are objectives that define the knowledge, skills, and dispositions needed to meet each of the given standards at the pre-kindergarten through 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, and 9 to 12 grade bands. The benchmarks are identified by an alphanumeric listing. An example, Stell 1A, or Stell 6B, and are highlighted in bold type. They are followed by supporting sentences, not in bold, that provide further detail about how the benchmarks can be implemented in order for students to meet the standards. Shown in this grade band 3 to 5 example is benchmark Stell 1F. The standard is Standard 1, Nature and Characteristics of Technology and Engineering. Stell 1F, describe the unique relationship between science and technology and how the natural world can contribute to the human-made world to foster innovation. People have from the beginning looked around to identify and use the materials and resources available to improve their lives. Raw materials and resources are shaped into tools, systems, and forms of energy to provide people with products that satisfy a need or a want. Energy is harnessed to provide power and heat, and animals and crops are raised for food and clothing. These and other processes continue today as people use raw materials to create items they need and want. The technology and engineering contexts presented in STEL describe the settings where the core disciplinary standards and benchmarks are best taught or applied. The example image from the lesson plan tool allows the user to select a context for their lesson. A reminder that the standards and practices can be taught through any of these contexts. The lesson plan tool has the user select the practices, or red octagon, in a similar manner. Next, we will look at examples of contexts, practices, standards, and benchmarks for different grade band lesson examples, starting with an elementary example. A lesson from Team's Next Gen Kindergarten fits with Technology and Engineering Context 6, the built environment. Kindergarten students may apply STEL 4C, compare simple technologies to evaluate their impacts during a unit where they design and build a habitat for an animal. A foam core model could be designed and built first. The teacher could then ask the class to predict whether the selected animals would use this shelter. Selecting appropriate classroom tools, the students would then construct their habitat. This links to TEP-3, Making and Doing, a reminder that even though the context is context number 6, the built environment, standards and practices are not taught in isolation. There's often overlap. The lesson plan tool allows the user to select more than one option for practices and standards taught. A lesson from Technological Systems fits within the context of the built environment. Students may apply STEL 6E, verify how specialization of function has been due at the heart of many technological improvements, in a space structure project. Students design and build a scale model space exploration environment and living habitat for our moon. Due to the distance from the Earth and extreme working conditions, students must consider every purpose, access to materials, and what skilled structural building work must be done. This project links to TEP-1, Systems Thinking. Unit 2 from Advanced Design Applications fits within the context of energy and power. 11th graders apply STEL 7 BB, implement the best possible solution to a design by working as a team to design and safely create a pneumatic engine that utilizes compressed air to transition reciprocating motion to rotary motion to complete a common task. During the project, the student teams will apply energy and power transmission systems to safely control fluid flow, motion, speed, and exhaust. They will also troubleshoot malfunctions and evaluate the overall performance of the pneumatic engine. This project also links to TEP-3, Making and Doing. We will take a look at how to find the STEL resources and tools. First, you need to navigate to ITEEA.org. From ITEEA.org, you can type into the site search found at the top right, STEL, and you will be redirected to the STEL's webpage. You can also select the Publications tab at the top and select Standards. You will find on the STEL's page an Overview tab, a STEL Resources tab, STEL Summary References, and STEL Lesson Plans. The example lessons we will look at today in the Lesson Plan tool can be found under the tab titled STEL Lesson Plans. If you forget, the interactive lesson plan tool also has embedded links that will direct you back to these areas within the site. To access your state-specific page, you will need to be a member and logged into ITEEA.org. You can log in at the top left using the green login icon. Your state has the option to post additional content, resources, and reminders to their page. The formal lesson plan tool allows the educator to select various standards and benchmarks and allows the user to input any standards and benchmarks that may not be listed. This could be due to your state-specific standards, or if you are differentiating lessons and wanting to select standards not found in your initial selection of grade bands. The STEM Center for Teaching and Learning encourages teachers to adjust their lessons and curriculum to best fit their students. The unformatted lesson the teacher receives is a Microsoft Word document. This allows the teacher to customize it to their school's theme, add in additional notes and reminders, and really make it feel like it is their own while ensuring that it is a complete lesson. Users can select their context area and grade band, and then they are provided with a list of appropriate STEL benchmarks. There's the option to add additional standards and benchmarks. In this example, we have selected the grade band range for grades 9 through 12. After selecting and inputting any additional standards and benchmarks, the user can select the STEL benchmark verb alignment. What does this mean? Curriculum developers and classroom teachers often need to make sure they are teaching and assessing students at the appropriate levels of the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains. The STEL benchmarks are written with active verbs to target different levels of those domains. In addition, curriculum developers and classroom teachers want to know whether the benchmarks are at the factual, conceptual, procedural, or metacognitive level of knowledge. The following page of the survey allows the user to select a drop-down method to select domains of learning. There is also a direct link to the alignment tool resources found on the STEL webpage. Next, you will select the STEL practices. Reminder that the standards and practices are not taught in isolation. There's often overlap. In this high school example of a lesson on electronic circuits, applicable STEL practices could be making and doing, critical thinking, optimism, and even include systems thinking. Some of the learning objectives consist of students constructing working electronic circuits using basic electronics. Making and doing can allow for creativity since there could be more than one way. They will also use digital multimeters to measure circuits. Students most likely could share multimeters and be collaborating on the measurements or even the build portion. Students will also differentiate alternating current from direct current and be able to describe the functions and purposes of electronic components such as resistors, capacitors, diodes, transistors, and would allow for systems thinking. The basic premise of the 6E Learning by Design model was to develop a student-centered model that would blend design, context and concepts, and inquiry. Having used the BSCS 5E model for many years, there was always the struggle that design was not fully represented. To that end, the new model added an lowercase small e called engineer. It is in this phase or cycle where students truly design and model as engineers would. The 6E portion of the lesson plan tool allows the user to reflect and consider how their lesson will engage students through experience, questions, how students will explore through predictions, experiments, observations, how they will explain through developing, progressing, and growth. The engineer, lowercase e, by applying, conceptualizing, modeling, and creating, how they will be enriched through interactions, questions, experiments, hypothesis, and how to evaluate through analysis, synthesis, and revisiting. The next portion of the lesson plan tool focuses on how the teacher would prepare for the lesson, including what materials students would need, what resources the teacher would need, such as video clips or printed off handouts to be distributed to the class, any safety and lab conduct, and much more. The tool concludes with assessments and enrichment, or how the teacher can modify the lesson to accommodate all learners. Once submitted, the lesson plan will be returned as a Microsoft Word doc to the provided email address. The teacher can then edit the document if they would like, or add in their school name, theme, logo, etc. All right, so we are going to begin the live demo portion. So I'm going to take you through ITEEA.org's webpage. And from here, there's this nice banner for the standards for technological and engineering literacy. Automatically, it takes you here if you find this on the home page. So I will go back and demonstrate. So from here, this nice banner, again, if you go up here to publications and select standards, you will also be taken here, as well as typing in the site search. This is a pretty great feature if you're trying to quickly find something within anywhere within our webpage. So from here, we're going to go over to the STEL Lesson Plans tab. You also do have access to a free download for PDF. And so I will say at first, this looks lengthy. If you fill this out entirely, it will ensure that you have a formal complete lesson. It does not require you to fill out every single input field. However, if you do not put your email address, it will not be able to get sent back to you. And we like to send them back edited, looking nice for you to use in your class. So in this example, I actually found a health example. So one of the nice things about the standards for technological and engineering literacy is that through these contexts, through these practices, through those benchmarks, they can apply to more than one area. So we've discussed briefly, there's a need for technology education teachers. Maybe there's a teacher that's going to start teaching technology education that was a former business teacher or former health and PE teacher. So this is a great tool that will ensure that you are aligning your lesson with the standards for technological and engineering literacy with your state standards. So in this example, I quickly found this online. This was not my work. I did give credit to the author, but the main idea was that these health students in 6th to 8th grade are going to put together a poster. So I'm giving you this example so you can see how much was actually there and what it's going to look like as we go through this SurveyMonkey tool, and then I'll have the end result available. So within this tool, you can add the teacher name. Again, you need an email address or it will not go back to you. School institution, we can say ITEEA. Engineering by design. And in this example, since it was a health-related activity, I chose that it was going to be medical and health-related technologies. This is one of the main context areas within the STEL. The SurveyMonkey tool has a lot of embedded tooltips and helpful links. If you click here, it will direct you to areas within that PDF or additional areas within that STEL resources tab. So the name of this course, I'm going to select health. And the lesson title was called Poster Contest. So it's good health and fitness practices to have your students thinking of. It was for grades 6 to 8. So I'm going to advance here to the next area without selecting this just to show you what happens. It took me to pre-kindergarten through 2nd grade. So you can navigate back through this entire survey. So if you forget or you need to reference back to a previous page, it will allow you to do that. It will keep your inputs here. So since this is grades 6 to 8, I'm going to select grades 6 to 8. Note there is the option to specify other because we are aware that there are some schools that incorporate 9th grade into a junior high level and so forth. So if we go next, we are now given only the standards for technological and engineering literacy standards that apply to grades 6 through 8. So from here, it goes through a lesson overview. What is the main idea? What do you want your students to do? So there's the big idea here. Again, if you hover, it's going to give you a tooltip information, the large, important, profound, and lasting ideas that will endure over a long period of time. If you click here, it's going to give you an example of something that fits within that grade range. So we're in grades 6 to 8. We now have an example of the engineering design process utilized in this area. So the big idea, enduring understandings, the profound, what's going to be gained at the end. This does not necessarily take place in every single lesson, and it might be included throughout the unit and not just in one specific lesson. Purpose of lesson. And then it goes through instructional time. So just to show you what some of this looks like. So the purpose of this was they wanted to use this as an end of the year project or as a formal presentation. The instructional time, you could say 90 minutes or depending on your class period. Under STEL benchmarks, again, if you click this, it's going to reference to this web page. So anytime if you're thinking, oh, I don't know how to get back to ITEA's page in this resource, these links are found throughout here. In this lesson, I felt that 4M aligns really well. Devise strategies for reducing, reusing, and recycling waste caused from the creation and use of technology. So maybe your students in a health class are thinking of ways to be healthier, including recycling, reusing, reducing. Another one I selected was 7Q. Apply the technology and engineering design process. So again, this is a health class, and they're actually doing some things that we do almost every day in technology education classrooms. And then 7S as well, create solutions to problems by identifying and applying human factors in design. There's health-related technologies out there, medical technologies, a variety of different resources, fitness, there's all those fitness apps now. Under other, please specify. This is where you can incorporate your specific state standards. So the formatted end result that I have produced for you has a few of these in there, including some from your design thinking and some from the health and physical education. It allows you to type in as many. This will actually increase. So don't think, oh, I can only type in one sentence here. You can type in as many. It then goes into the NGSS standards, and these are the ones that are abridged or best fit for the STELs. And these are found under the STEL resource tabs. Under here, there's the benchmark crosswalk matrix. There's a full listing, but then you also have these common core state standards for math, ELA, NGSS. I'm going to select this one, define the criteria. So one thing this tool is really great for is if you have lessons that maybe you put together, but they weren't fully complete, and you're thinking, oh, now's the time to go back and finalize these. This is also great to incorporate the new standards for technological and engineering literacy, especially if you have lessons that had previously utilized the STELs. If you are needing to complete a formal lesson for a review or for practice, this is a great tool. Or we can probably all think of that one educator, or maybe even yourself, that loves this one project and it's so fun, it's so great, but what is it really, what's it doing? Is it aligned with anything? It then proceeds with math benchmarks, ELA standards, and again, these are just for grades 6 through 8. So you're not going to be displaying or being shown standards that are for kindergarten or not within this area. If we go to the next page, this is the benchmark verb alignment, and actually linked right in here. If you click here, it's going to open to this resource. So this was a screenshot from that presentation, but if I scroll down here, actually gives you every single benchmark, the grade band, the benchmark address, and then cognitive, affective, psychomotor, or the knowledge dimension. So if you need to reference back to this, this is linked in and available for you. So I will mention we are in the process of developing another app that when you automatically select one of these standards or benchmarks, it will eventually populate what level of cognitive, affective, psychomotor domain that fits into. And this is a drop-down feature. So there are more than one options here. It does let you select. And they are broken down by standards. So for example, standard 2 is here, and then followed by standard 3 and so forth. Now we're at the STEL practices, learning objectives in the 6E model. So again, these are linked in here. It also directs you to the book as well. And this is where you might start selecting more than one option. In this lesson, I could justify that students would be working with creative objects, their creativity. They are making and doing. They might be critically thinking, optimism. They could be collaborating. You are learning objectives, and this is how it will be formatted to you. So in this lesson, students will be able to. What do you want them to do? And again, the STELs have those action verbs. So reference back to the standards for technological engineering literacy. They will guide you as an educator to what your students should be doing in order to become technologically literate. So the 6E learning model, this might be a little different than what you've seen in the past, but we throw in this E as engineer for apply, conceptualize, inform, design, model, and create. This is linked to ITEA's 6E Learning by Design page. So great resources in here. And again, these are 6E highlights for the lesson. So each unit should cover all of these, but a lesson might only cover one portion. And in a health poster design, they might be doing the engineer portion. They've applying what they've learned throughout the course. They are picking a fun topic that they want to present on. They are utilizing the design process to create a poster. So you could justify that this might just be the engineer. But this goes through and explains, explore, engage. So really this is reflecting, you're coming towards the end of writing your lesson. It's almost finalizing, doing that one last check of what are my students really doing? Is this purposeful for them to be completing this activity? It's working. Oh no. So I've actually never had this happen, but we're going to go through it again. I think I have internet. All right, there we go. I'm not sure. All right, so this is the preparation for the lesson. So this is teacher preparation, teacher resources. You can also upload additional files such as design briefs, audio-visual materials. Again, there's tooltips in here. So what do you need to do in order to prepare for the lesson? Teacher resources. You can list them here. They could be links. Required tools, materials, and equipment. So something to consider if you're working with students in groups, something to consider if your students have not used these tools in the past, which then leads you into lab, safety, conduct, classroom. So safety is a big, important issue here. I would definitely, as an educator going through this the first time, if you're in a lab environment, make sure you're listing the tools that your students potentially will be using. So that way you can ensure that your lab safety conduct is matching what you're asking them to do. Your student resources could be the design briefs for the students, vocabulary handouts available to them. So these are all available to be listed here. And then an area for student resources to be uploaded. Formative assessments, summative assessments, and then an enrichment portion of how to reflect what can you be doing for your students to continue their learning after this has concluded. What can you do if you have students working ahead that might need a little more guidance so that they're not distracting the students who are still completing the activity. And these, again, are linked back to the verb alignments if you need any additional resources, help throughout this process. And I will say it again, these areas are not required to fill out, but if you do, it's going to ensure that you have a formal lesson plan. And I'm going to show you some of those end results here. And then one last option to upload any files. Maybe you've navigated past those pages and you think, I don't want to go previous back to a few pages. There's one last chance to upload anything you might have missed. And then you will go to submit and we get that end result. And I will show you what some of them look like from the formatted end. So underneath, we're back here underneath the STELs page. On this far right tab, there's STEL lesson plans. So these are formatted lessons. They vary in length. They're examples you can look at. They are free resources for you. These are from the Engineering by Design curriculum. So for example, if we look at, and I do have ready for you a health example. So in this example, this was the poster contest. So this is how it looks reformatted and sent back to you. I did use the author. It was a medical health related technology. It was intended for in school. Grade level was 6 to 8. Here's the lesson overview. So in class, students brainstorm about topics and activities related in PE and health. Big purpose was good health and fitness is crucial for a healthy lifestyle. And then we get into the standards for technological and engineering literacy. This is how they will be formatted and sent back to you. So if you selected STEL 4M and under effective organization, this will be formatted and sent back. We then have a few examples for the science standards, as well as some New Jersey core curriculum content standards. So 2, I believe, from the design, and then 2 from the health and PE. Applicable STEL practices, so TEP-2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. I could justify that students, depending on how this activity was taking place, that they would be hitting all of these practices. Again, there's often overlap, so that is completely fine. In this lesson, students will. This was that learning objectives portion. So they will generate a list of healthy topics. They will brainstorm and design a poster. This is the 6E model learning highlights. In this example, it was just a small E for engineer. They were doing the building portion. They were researching, demonstrating the engineering design process through their presentation. Teacher preparation and procedures. So the teacher could have already had pre-topics ready, required materials and tools. You can't expect your students to start building if you don't have materials for them to build, as well as lab safety and classroom conduct. Maybe they're not utilizing heavy piece of equipment, but they should still be respecting the equipment. They should be safe in the classroom. Student resources, STEM notebooks. And then an enrichment extension portion. Maybe the students would present their poster then, volunteering at a community night. And the assessments portion, this would be, again, this is how it will be formatted back to you. And here's the grade 5 example that I just opened up from the page. So this was, see, home water usage. This is pretty lengthy compared to what I just demonstrated with you. But again, this is going to be your lesson. So if you fill out every single one of those fields, it's not required, but you will be sure to have a formal lesson as you're seeing right now. And in this one, they did cover quite a few of the highlights and teacher preparations, including step-by-steps. To recap, the lesson plan tool is free and can be used for any educator, any curricular subject. Each input field is not required, but if filled out entirely, will ensure the teacher has a formal lesson. The lesson plan tool has an emphasis on the standards for technological and engineering literacy. Standards set expectations and measurable goals, as well as help guide the educator. The lesson plan tool has embedded links and tooltips to explain and provide additional help. The submitted lesson will be returned to the provided email address as a Microsoft Word document. The lesson plan tool functions properly. Future version will include automatically populating corresponding standards and benchmarks after the user first selects the initial STELs. Well, I can say thank you so much. Thank you for the time. I hope that you find the STEL lesson plan tool as a great resource. I think it is actually fantastic. In future development, we'll be automatically populating that for you. But again, as an educator, if you're a new educator or you're just trying to get better or more practice at writing lessons, there really is a step-by-step guide ensuring that you have a formal lesson. So if you have tech ed projects you've done in the past and you've never aligned it with any of the standards, if you have tech ed activities that you've used that they might be on that gray area of, are your students really getting much out of them? Please use this tool. It will be great. So thank you so much. And we can open this up for questions, discussions, if you would like.
You can just type your questions into chat.
You'll notice that we put some resources in the chat window that can be downloaded as well. Darcy, while they're populating in any questions, I was just thinking one of the areas toward the end of that lesson tool is the ability to insert other documents. And some of the things I was thinking was maybe like a safety test or something like that. And that's why I threw in the ITEEA safety site, because it has student exams for all the machines and tools and all those kinds of things.
Oh,
And
yes,
then
it's fantastic.
also, assessments, right? So you could put some assessments in there as well.
Yes,
and
and
attach those.
gosh, the educator could even link things. And I mean, I know a lot of folks are using Google, and keep your link private, that we won't be accessing it again, because that's going to be just formatted and sent back to you. So anything you submit in there, say if you keep that link to where we can't edit it, that's fine as well.
So I see the point about college students could really benefit from the tool. It is free. You don't have to be a member to use the tool. Download it, use it. It's ready to rock and roll. We would appreciate it if people would put their profile in on the website in the upper left and log in. You don't have to be a member to do that. We would appreciate you being a member, though. But it is a good resource for college students, absolutely.
And I'm very excited for the future implementation of this too.
Yeah. We have several sessions at the upcoming conference on March 22 to 27 that deal with STEL, and there'll be engineering by design lessons and the workshops being done and different things like that. They're all downloadable and available. So I hope you can register for that. So Frank, as we're moving forward, feel free to shoot us any questions that might come up down the road, and we can provide some support as well.
Sure. And just, on behalf of all of us, thank you again, because really these standards address our content in a way that, unfortunately, the most recent set of standards in New Jersey really do not. And they certainly, our current state standards just don't go into the depth that we see with the STEL. So I really appreciate that you fixed a problem that I think we were really lacking here in New Jersey. And as we are going to move in the coming months and years to better align our state standards to the national standards, to have this as a resource to really show us what a proper tech ed program will look like is just so crucial to so many of us here in the state. So thank you so much. I know Steve and Phil, you were both very influential in getting these completed over the last few years, and to all the members of ITEEA who worked on them, just know how much we appreciate them here locally.
Well, I'll be remiss not to give a shout out to Tom Loveland from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore and the Council for Technology on Teacher Education for our association, because they were the ones that instigated the process. And they said, we're going to get this done. And they did. And it was fun to run with the project. But if it wasn't for Tom, wasn't for Marie Hopeful, wasn't for Phil and a few others, this would have been a very challenging component. But it's over the top. So we're really thrilled. We have an excellent tool. We hope everybody can ride it all the way through.
And certainly to the members that are watching, if there are other questions, feel free to always reach out to me. You can reach out to Steve and Phil directly, but I can help get you in touch with them, as well as if there are other things that we can do to help best support you as you really implement these when we go to rewrite curriculum and change our lesson plans moving forward. If there are other presentations like this that you'd like to see us do in these evening times, reach out. We need those ideas, and we'll do our best to make them work for you.
So thank you for hosting this. I mean, I'm glad to get the word out. This is fantastic. So thank you.
I like the comments. That's awesome. It's good to know. Good to hear.
So we did have someone in Turkey use the lesson plan tool, and then someone in Pennsylvania. And it looks good. It looks really good. So
in fact, in Pennsylvania, they won our challenge, didn't they? They won the challenge. The one from Millersville.
Oh, wait, but
Yeah.
What happened?
One of the teachers from Millersville, actually, a student, a graduate.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Won the contest, the lesson planning contest.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Had to put a shout in for my alma mater.
Yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you again, guys, and thank you for those that joined us and those that are going to be watching the recorded version when we get that out in the next few days.
Yeah, we'll send that to you. And Frank, we appreciate all you do for New Jersey and the educators there. And we appreciate all the time you give, because I've noticed a lot on the schedule lately for NJT, EEA, and we appreciate that. It's awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you again, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Joe. I need to.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.